This is the world's top cop with the police conduct scale. I'm going to scale the conduct of police officers in Wisconsin. A video went viral all over the world of these police officers that performed a traffic stop. And as your world's top cop, I'm going to break it down as quick as I can and straight to the point. Now, what I'm about to tell you, you're not going to hear it from some rookie or individual who doesn't know what they're talking about. I am the best in the world at what I've done as a police officer for only 12 years. And within my 12 years of service, I became the best in the world. And a lot of what I've done dealt with narcotics arrests when I was on patrol, before I went undercover. And I've committed thousands of traffic stop arrests dealing with narcotics. And let me tell you something. Everything that I've done was done in the name of an oath to serve, protect with integrity and honor. There was never a case of any kind of misconduct, violations, or mishandling evidence from my part. These officers, when you see the video and once it's done, I am going to scale their conduct and will leave you without a doubt of whether or not these Wisconsin Caledonia police officers in Wisconsin, whether or not their conduct was in violation of the law. Let's get right to it. Watch this video and I'll be back.
I got specks of green. You're good to search if you need to. Corner cut. What's what? What word?
I got you on camera, bro.
I got you on camera. We're all good.
Hey, bro, you just threw that in here.
Yeah, because it was in his pocket, and I don't want to hold on to it. It's on their body cam that they took it off of him, so.
You just threw that in here, bro. I got you on camera, man.
I'm telling you where it came from, so.
I got you on camera, bro.
It's an empty baggie at the moment, too, so. Okay, buddy.
All right, now, so you see, Officer Matthew was the first to observe in the video. He's observing the back seat of that vehicle. Officer Matthew positions his camera in a way so that you can see fully the back seat and what's in the back seat of the car. So then he goes to the officers who has a black male detained in handcuffs. And while they have this black male detained in handcuffs, we see a woman off to the side. She appears to be a Caucasian woman. She's not in handcuffs. So we have one who was in handcuffs, one who's freely moving without handcuffs, and then we have one inside the car that they left in the car. He doesn't have handcuffs, neither he's detained, but he's freely can do what as he please, while these other two officers are dealing with one who is in handcuffs. So there's already confusion all over this one scene. There's no order, there's confusion, there's nothing being done properly as police officers at this scene. So when Officer Matthew goes to the other two officers, he indicates to these officers that they can do a search of that individual because he saw specks of green inside the vehicle. So now the specks of green, I'm assuming he's referring to weed. I don't know. He just said there was a specks of green. So that indicates a code language to the other officers to go ahead, do your thing. The code also meant for that other officer, without him having to say anything, he goes around the other officer and around the detained individual and hands Officer Matthew evidence. Now, what concerned me is that the evidence that was handed to Matthew was one part of the evidence. There was something left inside the hand of that officer and only gave Officer Matthew only the plastic bag of evidence. Why didn't he give the other form of evidence that was still left in his hand? So now we have a chain of custody of evidence not properly being handled on the scene of this traffic stop. So now the chain of custody comes from that one officer to Officer Matthew. So the chain of custody then goes to Officer Matthew going back to the vehicle. Once Officer Matthew goes back to the vehicle, Officer Matthew now make sure that he positions his body in a way so that you cannot see from his video angle on his body of him tossing this evidence back in the vehicle. But what he did not suspect was for the individual, the citizen in the car, the front seat, watched him on live video toss that evidence back in the car. So when he tosses the evidence back in the car, he now puts on gloves to cover his hands. So he has evidence of his handling, chain of custody, all over the evidence of the narcotics bag from the other officer also, who hands him the evidence to Officer Matthew. So now there's evidence of his fingerprints on that bag. So my question is, where did this evidence come from? Where did the bag come from? Did it come off the person who's detained? Now the evidence that was in the car, what he claims as specks of green. Why didn't he remove the person in the front seat out of the car if there's evidence of drugs inside the car? Why didn't he detain the other one inside the car but left him in the car? So when he came back to the car, now he tosses more evidence back in the car and leaves the passenger in the car while you cannot see from the camera angle that he tosses it back in the car. So now we have evidence that was illegally obtained. Now we have a search that was illegal, and now we're dealing with planting of evidence that would have led to more narcotics being found in the car by the officer, not from the car itself. Because where else would the evidence of more narcotics would have come from? And why would he have put on a glove after tossing the evidence from the other officer inside the car? That alone then would have given him the ability to maneuver his camera on his body back to the back seat of the car, which would have indicated that, oh, surprisingly, that the front passenger would have dipped or dumped or tossed the evidence in back of the car, which would have given him the authority now to detain the person in the front seat of the car. And now we have the arrest of 2 or 3 individuals, or whoever they wanted to arrest, that were inside the car on narcotics, and no one would have seen or known unless, and thankfully, by the person in the front seat of the car disrupted their flow of illegal searching and planting of evidence by these corrupt, defiled, despicable, unprofessional, and lack of the word of what we will call even police officers in uniforms, and what they did in Wisconsin for that department to have handled this case. And this case needs to be further investigated of how many traffic stops that these officers performed and how many have led to illegal searches and arrest of individuals of narcotics, and how many complaints that these officers have against them on traffic stops. These police officers ought to be immediately removed from their positions, dishonorable, and never again to wear uniforms. And people who are wearing that uniform on that day, certainly those two officers, need to go to jail on their way to prison. And for the chief, Christopher Bosch, who has now stated that no wrong was being committed by their officers, his officers, further indicates that this police agency has no clue of how to conduct themselves, nor to protect and serve with integrity and do their jobs effectively and appropriately as police officers in the name of the law. The chief of police is just as corrupt as the officers, because the chief is allowing these officers to stay on duty and perform their duties, as corrupt as they are, but the conduct that they've already have shown before the world, that they are indeed need to be an agency that needs to be certainly looked at further, and for that mayor to remove that chief, and the citizens of Wisconsin need to remove Chief Bosch from his leadership, and every police chief around this country ought to be on high alert and come against this chief. And this is the problem. Every police officer in your right mind knows what these police officers done, and what this chief has said on the behalf of these officers is a complete violation of the oath and of the law. This is what is going on in this country we call America. Now police officers and police departments are just straight and strictly running and operating in complete violation of constitutional rights of citizens across this country, and is mainly affecting people that look like me. And that's why you see me where I am now, and I can no longer perform on full active duty as a police officer, because I've been removed, because I could not and will not and shall never stay silent and allow this kind of actions to continue. And this is why the solutions I have as your world's top cop will completely eliminate this kind of actions against everyday citizens such as we have just seen. The solutions I have will eliminate these actions. The strategic and proper steps and plans put in place will without a doubt eliminate this kind of misconduct. And I have the information that you must look at and join and unite with me to change, reforming the police agency, not in the way that we claim needs to be reformed, but in a way that will bring a new era of policing to better effectively serve, protect, and handle situations and with their interactions with citizens all over this country. I have nothing else to say but this. Those police officers, certainly those two, need to be removed and put in prison. And the chief boss need to be removed and never again to have a police chief badge in his life to go off and retire and ride off somewhere in the sunset, wherever it is you need to go, because obviously you're no chief of Wisconsin, of that city, of that area where you claim you serve the people of Wisconsin. I have nothing else to say. I'm out.